If the Old Testament said that the Messiah would arrive in Times Square wearing red and white on June 6, 2027, what do you think would happen that day? Exactly. It would be a freaking madhouse. There would be a bunch of crazies who think they're God, a bunch of jerks mocking the whole thing, and a bajillion Christians, Jews, and Muslims crowding in, hoping to get a glimpse at the real Messiah. In the midst of this, there's also probably some nutjob who wants to blow themselves up to bring about the apocalypse or something. Who knows? What we can say for sure is it would be absolute chaos, unlike anything ever seen. And the only way that New York would be able to cope with it would probably be to just shut off access in general, which itself would probably lead to riots or even a full-on war in the streets. Because of this exact sort of Where's Waldo scenario or something close, the Old Testament was much more cryptic about revealing when and where the Messiah would arrive. So in this video, we'll look at what does the Old Testament actually say about when the Messiah will come. The first of the two prophecies we'll look at is located in Daniel chapter 9. This chapter takes place during Israel's exile to Babylon. Daniel is reading the book of Jeremiah and comes across a passage in chapter 25 that leads him to realize that Israel's time in exile would be 70 years, and that time was about up. Daniel begins to pray for his people and for the city of Jerusalem when the angel Gabriel flies into the room, which was probably terrifying. Anyway, the angel Gabriel tells Daniel he's been sent to deliver a message. And this cryptic message beginning in verse 24 was this: 77s are decreed for your people and your holy city to finish transgression, to put an end to sin, to atone for wickedness, to bring in everlasting righteousness, to seal up vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy place. Now, the 77s or 70 weeks, depending on the translation you have, is a sort of play on words, meaning 70 weeks of years. Many versions of the Bible, Christian and Jewish, simply translate the verse as 70 weeks of years. So this 77s or 70 weeks of years equates to 70 times 7 or 490 years. Gabriel proceeds, he says, "Know and understand this, from the time the word goes out to restore and rebuild Jerusalem until the anointed one, the ruler, comes, there will be 7 sevens and 62 sevens. It will be rebuilt with streets and a trench, but in times of trouble. After the 62 sevens, the anointed one will be put to death and will have nothing. The people of the ruler who will come will destroy the city and the sanctuary. The end will come like a flood. War will continue until the end, and desolations have been decreed." From this, we can see from the time the word goes out to restore and rebuild Jerusalem, there are 7 weeks of years and 62 weeks of years, which adds up to 483 years until the anointed one comes. And then after 483 years, the anointed one will be cut off or put to death. The question then becomes, well, when does the 483 years start? Well, there are 3 candidates recorded in the Old Testament. Taking the earliest of these and the latest of these, we get a range of when the anointed one, aka the Messiah, will come between 55 BC and 38 AD. So Christians believing that Jesus is the Messiah would immediately want to know, would this timing work for Jesus? And whether it does depends on the decree. The first decree, the decree of Cyrus, would not work. In 55 BC, Jesus would not have come, as his birth would not follow for another 50 years or so. The second decree, however, the decree of Artaxerxes around 458 BC, could fit within a Jesus timeline. Jesus would have been born by 25 or 26 AD and would have been cut off, a term meaning executed, after that time. Not to mention, the years seem to align well with key events recorded in Jesus' ministry. It's generally believed that Jesus' baptism by John and the start of his public ministry began sometime between 26 and 29 AD. Thus, when it says, from the time the word goes out to restore and rebuild Jerusalem until the anointed one, the ruler, comes, it could be referring to the start of Jesus' public ministry. From there, he would be cut off or executed several years later. Now, the third decree, the decree of Artaxerxes recorded in Nehemiah, seems to most align with the decree about rebuilding Jerusalem, as the other ones dealt more with the temple. However, 483 years after 445 BC would be 38 AD, which would be too late as Jesus would have already been cut off. Or is it? In 1894, a guy named Sir Robert Anderson suggested that we're looking at these dates wrong. He said in the day and place where the prophecy was given, they did not use a 365-day calendar like we do today. Instead, using a biblical prophetic year composed of 360 days, 483 years equates to 173,880 days. And if you count 173,880 days from 445 BC on a modern calendar, you'd arrive at year 32 AD, a time that could be prior to Jesus' crucifixion. But the case he makes did not stop there. Nehemiah 2:1 establishes that the decree of Artaxerxes went out in the month of Nisan. And if you take the first day of the month of Nisan in year 445 BC and count 173,880 days, you would arrive at April 6, 32 AD. What's special about that date? Well, if Jesus were crucified in 32 AD, April 6, 32 AD would happen to be a day known to Christians as Palm Sunday, a day when Christians celebrate Jesus' triumphant entry into Jerusalem, a day when he was given a king's welcome with the laying down of palms while he rode atop a donkey, fulfilling a Messianic prophecy recorded in Zechariah chapter 9. Now, when it comes to biblical dating, there's a lot of debate. So opinions on when events took place can vary by years or even decades, so assigning a very specific date is quite bold. That said, if Jesus were crucified in 32 AD, this would align nicely with Daniel 9, as the Anointed One would arrive to Jerusalem as king on Palm Sunday and would be cut off or executed just several days later. Regardless of the specific day, the key thing to note here is that the timeline of Jesus' ministry could align with the Daniel 9 prophecy. Now, obviously, a Jewish audience would not agree that the Messiah has already come, so let's briefly address that. While there's certainly evidence that at least some Jews in the day of Jesus were expectant of a Messiah based on the writings of Daniel, today most Jews explain the unfulfilled prophecy of Daniel 9 in one of two ways. Either they state that the 70 weeks of years were referring to symbolic periods of time, or they point to the Hebrew grammar being ambiguous as to whether it is unanointed one or the anointed one. They argue the interpretation should be unanointed one, like any king or priest, rather than the anointed one, as in the Messiah. And then they propose various different high priests and rulers that might fill in the blanks, none of whom are a very compelling fit for putting an end to sin or atoning for wickedness. Also, if you can simply fill in the blank with any old high priest, it begs the question, why did Gabriel go through so much trouble flying in to deliver this message? We will go into more depth about the counter-arguments and other aspects of the Daniel 9 prophecy, including the 70th year in our video dedicated to the prophecy of the 70 weeks. But for the purposes of this video, let's look at another prophecy dealing with when the Messiah will come. While definitely not the most riveting of openings, the book of Matthew starts with a long genealogy that leads to Jesus. The book of Luke also contains a long genealogy. Now, obviously the writers weren't including these genealogies for their entertainment value. They did this to address a question any Jewish person would have for someone claiming to be the Messiah. Are they from the lineage of King David? The Messiah being from the line of King David is a tenet of the Jewish faith, and hence something that the gospel writers set to establish early on. Now, what's problematic about this for Jews today is that in order for a prophecy to mean anything, it needs to be both significant and verifiable. I mean, what's the point of a prophecy that says the Messiah will be a person that exists someday? That's really not much of a prophecy at all. And this is the situation that exists today when it comes to the line of David. Because after a period of time, the line of David becomes extraordinarily difficult to verify. You see, between 66 and 74 AD was the First Jewish-Roman War. The Romans, led by the future Emperor Titus, besieged the city of Jerusalem around 70 AD, destroying the Second Temple and laying waste to the city, just as the prophecy in Daniel 9 declared. And the result of this was the loss of any records that would assert someone's lineage being from King David. Thus, to be able to prove their lineage is of King David, the latest the Messiah could come would be within a few generations of 70 AD. And if someone's lineage to David can't be verified, it begs the question, why would the Bible have put so much emphasis on the Messiah being from the lineage of David? I mean, if the Messiah could essentially be anyone on a long enough timeline and there'd be no way to prove the lineage one way or the other, why didn't the Bible simply say the lineage of Adam, or just not even mention it at all? From both of these, you can see that the Old Testament is very clear that the Messiah would have had to come a long time ago. It was also very clear about the place, which you can read for yourself. Now, I don't know about you, but I only know of one person who was born in Bethlehem at a time that his lineage to David could be proven, whose life and death would align with Daniel's prophecy of the 70 weeks, who made the claim that they were the Messiah and fulfilled many other messianic prophecies found in the Old Testament. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please help us out by liking it and subscribing to our channel. We'd also ask you to consider supporting the production of more content like this by making a donation at prodigal.org.